Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hotline League. This is a master planned episode. We've had our guest booked for weeks, and he's finally available. I'm so excited to get into the show. Let's go ahead and introduce my co-host before we get to introducing our special guest, none other than Cubby here in a bright red hat. If you're listening, podcast listeners, and you don't have video, just know he's got a bright red hat on with some text on it. And I can't really read the text, so who knows what it says, but that's what he's wearing right now. Cubby,
yeah,
how you doing?
It's very patriotic to the city of Chicago too, Travis. So get even closer to that.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Very patriotic is what I'm hearing. Gotcha.
Yeah.
He's wearing
Yeah.
what he would describe as a patriotic red hat with some text on it. How's your week been, Cubby?
Red's generous, but no, week's been all right. I was really busy this past week. I had a 6-day stretch where it was 3 days of co-streaming NACL into 3 days of casting LPL. My schedule was a mess, but it's fixed now. It was a good week. A lot of League was played or watched, and got to watch a couple shows too. If you want to talk about some of that on the catch-up, but yeah, it was a nice week.
Nice. Jamada, I have you at 200%, but people are still saying you're too quiet, so feel free to arrive with enthusiasm as I introduce our guest, none other than Jamada.
It could be because I am being a little bit quiet. I think once I actually start talking, the audio will do the thing.
Very good.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm back. Travis has been hunting me down for like the last 3 or 4 weeks, maybe, but hasn't really synced up until right now because I happen to be in the chat and they needed a guest. So ultimate planning from top to bottom, as always, with Hotline League.
Yeah, we keep getting trolled. I keep being told from one team that they want to send a member of their team on, and then every week, like Lucy and Charlie Brown, if anybody gets that reference, I just get the football yoinked away from me, and I fall on my ass. And Jamada is here to pick me up, and that's why I appreciate him. No, Jamada, how you been? What's going on over in Europe?
Oh, man. A lot of stuff. League of Legends here is weird, but I've been enjoying it. You know, I'm like a true neutral now to the LEC. The NLC stuff has been fantastic too, because that's always the kind of underlying narrative, all the Los Ratones stuff going on, the Ruddy Sack stuff going on. And yeah, it's just been a fantastic return since First Stand that I think is going to continue to deliver a lot of shenanigans, because there's a big circle of suck going on in NA. There's almost as big a circle of suck going on in the LEC as well. And in fact, there's arguably two groups of circle of sucks going on.
Wow, it's a whole sucking circle. I see.
Yeah,
very descriptive. Well, it's great to have you on. And I should warn all of our viewers and listeners that unfortunately tonight's episode, because we have Jamada on, will cost you about 84% more because he's coming in from Europe. So that's an unfortunate reality of where we're at right now. But, you know, good to have him on regardless. No, okay, so
my voice.
so things have been going are as interesting over there as they are over here, it sounds like. So that's cool. I'm excited to hear more. Well, maybe we'll sneak in a call. Also, you know, people always want us to talk about Los Ratones. Maybe we can sneak in a Los Ratones call or something like that. Maybe an NALCS comparison, or I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I don't know, man. Their season is so boring in NLC. Let's be honest. Like they prove they can beat the team that they need to beat in there, and
wow,
it's pretty much just them styling on people at the moment.
I hate to I hate that this statement is true, but it kind of is. It's almost undeniably true as well. Like
they've proved they're just better than the league, you know? Yeah.
All right, you guys heard it here. Cubby has said that it's not worth watching NACL.
It is. Oh, yeah. He said it, not me.
It's not interesting.
There's Ruben A and flip the C in the L on that, Travis.
All right. Let's talk about what happened this past week. So, LYON seems to be surprising people. That's been kind of cool. What other major news is coming? I mean, I guess on the drama front, it's been a little quiet in the past week. Maybe this time we'll get callers that will talk about the games. That would be nice. Yeah. That would be cool. What? Anything I'm missing, Cubby?
Honestly, no. I didn't really see much news this past week.
All the drama is coming in other regions. Like the Guma T1 drama is crazy. We've got Caps renewing his contract until 2027 with G2, which is, I don't know, it's pretty cool to see somebody just be like such a franchise player. I think that's really exciting. Maybe chat will let us know if there's anything else that's going on here, but it seems like it's pretty good. Oh, yeah, well, we did talk a little bit about the FlyQuest 6-man roster last week.
Yeah,
when we had Papa Smithy on.
Was on.
Yeah, but we can continue to talk about it, and obviously we can talk about some of the rumors around Team Liquid and all that type of stuff in terms of their roster stuff. I know that the conversation is always continuing around players like Umpty and Team Liquid, so we'll chat about that. But yeah, other than that, it might be a little bit more of a quieter episode this week, or not even quieter. It's going to be an explosive episode. It might be a shorter episode, an explosive short episode. So we'll get into that. I do want to shout out PrizePicks and NZXT, though, for sponsoring the show. Great to have them on as partners, as always. We'll talk more about them as we get into all of this. But yeah, I guess, Jamada, I know we've got a little bit of extra time here at the beginning. I'd just like to hear how things are going with you overall. I mean, what's the update from across the way?
Oh man, general stuff with me, it's quiet and I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm living my own podcast life as well. Technically your side of the pond, but PowerSpike covers all the major regions. I know typically you and Cubby here, you tend to focus on the NA, and then if there's international stuff going on, spread your wings, do whatever is kind of in the cycle. But man, it's been really interesting actually doing podcasting frequently for one, and then also it's given me the actual excuse of watching all 4 regions like very, very consistently, which I can't say I've done since I was actually a coach. So it's been really, really fun. A bit grindy. I forgot how much time you can sink into just going through VODs, even if you're doing them at 2 speed. Actually watching them within 10, making sure you're picking up all the things you need to be picking up. But that aside, that's been great. Working on the LC has been, fantastic. It's just really fun to be kind of a part of the region that at least started my casting journey. And then I even managed to squeeze in an LPL cast today over on LPL English, which was ridiculously fun. I don't know why I did to deserve those 2 specific series, but obviously I've played some higher power somewhere.
Which
for
series
RNG
are these, so
Ultra
people can go
Prime.
back?
It was RNG Ultra Prime, which was unreasonably fun. Genuinely unreasonably fun. The third game was a bit boring until like it all kind of kicked off. And then JDG FPX. FPX were 1-4 going into the series. Yeah. JDG were 3-0. And JDG's 3-0 looked like a relatively clean 3-0.
Best team in the league, 3-0, frankly.
Yeah, for sure. Whereas with FPX, 1-4, yes, but they'd lost a lot of their series 1-2, right? Against some decent opponents. So in my head, I was thinking, JD should probably win, but like they can't disrespect FPX. And I feel like, unfortunately, that's what they in part did, yes, but then also I think got surprised by things like they whipped out Kassadin in game 3. And it ended up completely, I mean, honestly, it destroyed FPX's early game, and then it completely saved it afterwards. And then there was also the curious case of Shadow. If you watch the series in that game 3, you know what I'm talking about. It was, to summarize it very quickly, it was as if the spirit of Umpty's Death Record game had invested himself completely in Shadow for 35 of the 40 minutes of that game until Shadow made undeniably the winning play. Fun day of LPL. So yeah, that's been fantastic. And I'm looking forward. I'm actually going to be doing more LPL this week too. So it's going to be really, really fun.
No, I'm happy to have you being a little bit more involved because the schedule definitely ate me up last week. So
yeah, it's
it's a lot.
It's brutal. It's brutal. I don't feel for you guys at all.
All right. Well, it's great to have you here. It's fun that you started that sentence by saying that it's been very quiet, and then you listed so many things that you've been up to.
4 things. Yeah. When I say quiet, I mean I've had a lot of downtime. It's weird. It's like I I've had a lot to do, but also there's a weird amount of time where I'm kind of just laying in bed scrolling on the phone or like at the gym. Like I'm final weeks of recovery. I broke my elbow in February. I haven't been able to lift at the gym for ages, and I'm finally starting to get back to that. So it's like, yeah, again, it's a weird balance I haven't had in a little while, where work life feels good against like free time.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been a little bit cubby since we've done the whole spiel. So would you like to go through how people can call in?
Yeah, if you guys want to join for the evening, go to discord.gg/Travis. There you can drop your takes at me, at Cubby. If it's good, we'll pull you into the waiting room, and then we can drag you out of the show and go from there. But any and all takes get taken from the Discord. So it doesn't matter if you're a sub or subtopics or pub topics. It's all good. So if your take's good, we'll take it, and hopefully we get some good combos going on the episode about quite a few of the games that we've had going on, since we are kind of lacking in other topics.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that in just a moment. But it looks like we already have somebody in the waiting room, so maybe we can go ahead and grab them, and we'll pull them in. Go through.
All right. Yeah, if we can get going, we can.
Yeah. While we go through that, do you want to give a shout out to Maddie K for the 2 months? Woe to you. Thank you for the 7 months. And then over on YouTube, we had Steel Zeppelin, Space Uwu Cowboy, and AZ who became members. So thanks, everybody. Also had some folks before the start of the show. Also want to just give a shout out that myself and Apollo, for those that remember Apollo, will be going to MXP Santa Clara this weekend to play some Magic and participate as like community guests of that event. So if you would like to go do that, check out MXP Santa Clara. It's pretty cool. It's going to be fun Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Just a general shout out there. Our first caller of the night is none other than Yami. Yami, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from the DMV area down on the East Coast.
And what would you like to talk about on the show?
So I would like to talk about how I think LYON is one of our top 4 teams. I think they're going to take down either C9 or 100 Thieves this upcoming... It's not a super weekend because it goes on to Monday for some reason, not Friday. But this upcoming super week, I think the kind of compelling like core points that I would say, I guess to clarify, I think that 100 Thieves is the most likely just because they are a very high variance team. I think they're a team that struggles a lot when they can't hands check into their opponents. The reason I'm saying C9, I think, is the other likely one is just because they lost 100 Thieves, who I don't think is a team that you can be losing to if you want to be like on the top half of the league. Or the kind of like upper echelons of the league. I think that they are kind of where I would put the gatekeepers at. But kind of my core point for LYON like being a good team, well, aside from the tape that we have, is I'm a bit rambly. I thought I'd have a little bit more time to get my points together before getting pulled on. But so Saint is a very, very good player. He's a very good mid laner. I think he's probably... We haven't really had a chance to see it just because of how the first split went and because of just how different games have gone. LYON kind of just won through like clean map play, clean team fights. We haven't really like needed to see him pop off. But if you are someone who has seen any of the LCK Challengers League from last year, that entire like DK roster from the past like 2 years was crazy good. But wait, no, Saint was... I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the team he was on. He was DK, right?
Well, okay, so
Yeah,
Saint was
yeah.
good, is your argument.
Yeah, he was. He
he
was
was.
on DK challenges. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm not crazy. Yeah, no, Saint was very, very good last year. I think if you remember kind of when they announced his sign, like when the like low-key Saint signings were announced, everybody was kind of mystified. And low-key, like not to denigrate him, like has been a very good player, but just Saint is like also very much in that tier of like top LCK CL talent that just doesn't get a shot because if you're a mid laner in LCK and you're not, better than Faker, Showmaker, Trophy, it's going to be hard to find a team like on the upper levels. But we're talking about Henna, who has been kind of a consistent journey, like consistent factor in the LCK for a very long time, versus, one of those older, kind of decrepit old men playing ADC for C9. And I think also for 100 Thieves, FBI is also like 24, 25. So just, very, very ancient people who they're competing against, this young, up-and-coming Korean hotshot. I think we have to talk about the fact that we have in the top lane for LYON, we have one of the recent LCS, one of the last LCS MVPs is playing for LYON in top. He is a champion Ocean. We know that he can play supportive tanks. We know that he can play carries. And he's playing into a rookie, a very green player who just doesn't have the same kind of experience in these very in these like playing into these kind of varied like champ pools and matchups. He's still learning. And then we have in the jungle and the support position some of the LLA goats who've been winning on R7 basically consistently for like the past like 4 years.
Yeah, and we don't need to go through the full roster, but it sounds like you're just very confident in each of the players.
You feel good.
Yeah, I feel good. And my kind of final point is just most of all, they have momentum. And you know what they say about rockets and stopping halfway.
The momentum.
Okay.
Every time I've heard momentum on Hotline League. Okay, let me ask you this. Do you think it is fair to say that they have had the easiest 2 weeks in terms of opponents in the league?
I think that's fair to say. Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
So that's the only thing is I kind of want to level set, because for the people that are not watching every week, they have played basically the teams that most people would consider to be the bottom teams since the start. So they started with DSG, then they went to Dig, then they played SR, and this past week they lost to Team Liquid in what was a close match at times, but also like Team Liquid.
It's a competitive game.
Yeah, it was a competitive match, but also I think Team Liquid is maybe, quite frankly, they kind of feel like one of the shakier teams from the top side of the power rankings, or whatever you want to call it. So
yeah,
I just feel like they've had the easiest path in the last couple of weeks, and so that is like I kind of want to put that down as table stakes for this conversation.
I think that the fair thing to say about LYON at the moment is they look like the strongest out of the bottom 4 teams, and if they played a better map against TL, like I feel like individually they made some decent plays, but they just did really fail to snowball their victory, and the TL outplayed them later on in the game, where again I think it was pretty winnable for LYON. I feel like that's where I get a little bit concerned, the fact that they weren't able to play the map well enough against TL to make sure that their lead won them the game. So I think that's tricky in that one. It's not like they didn't have tools too. So for me, that's, I guess, my greatest concern about LYON, who are going to have a little bit of tougher week of games given the opponents they played so far. But I think that it's very fair to say that they are the team that's playing the best in the bottom 4, even if, as Travis pointed out, they have had the weakest schedule so far. It still feels that way.
Yeah.
I feel like they have the potential to definitely break into the top 4, but I don't think it'll be a consistent thing. I think what it potentially turns into is like a situation where I realistically Fly and TL are still very ahead of the pack, right? Beyond that, then like you're mentioning C9 and 100 Thieves, I think maybe if LYON actually develop a little bit more, gain a little bit more discipline, I think, around the objectives, like specifically, and that is, I'm just gonna flame an A for the sake of flaming it. That always feels like one of the bigger drawbacks of like teams in the region is the overall consistency of objective setup has, at least to me, when I watch teams in the LPL, LSK, it always feels like a little bit behind in comparison. There's obviously teams that are better and worse at it. But I think if you're a middle of the pack team, that is like one of the things that if you can outdo other teams in an A, you start to just improve like tenfold. So to me, that's it. Because I think, their TL game, like Cobby was saying, the overall like mechanics check of it all was fine. Like LYON were throwing hands perfectly. with TL for the first, what was it, 25 minutes? I can't remember when the turnaround ended up happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, mechanically it's very clear at the very least that they're there. I think it's realistically going to be about not buying too much into the hype of right now. They've beaten the teams that they should have beaten, or like, in the bottom half they've beaten. They played one top 4 team, and the result didn't go their way, right? So I would be apprehensive to outright be like, yeah, they're going to be top 4, but I could see maybe a C9 that goes down a struggle path, right? That maybe can't get their shit together because of, I don't know, you can really just name anything. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the bot lane starts just shit in the bed, right? And they just start getting 2v2'd on repeat consistently. Though I feel like the way that Sven's been playing with his confidence, it might not end up happening. But you get the idea, all right? Something is going to have to really fall apart. Maybe like 100 Thieves never get their mid to late game together. Because that's always been their thing. If they can, go toe-to-toe. I think, actually, that is where I would like to see LYON have a good showing, is against 100 Thieves. Because I think if they can go toe-to-toe mechanically with 100 Thieves, and then actually have a consistent macro game after 20 minutes, then I can start to believe in a team like LYON.
Okay.
Until then, I would be very, very apprehensive to be like, yeah, I think they can break into the top 4, more times than they don't.
I think that seems super fair, because if they can handle 100 Thieves, then I do think that means that they are up top. Because 100 Thieves has looked pretty good, and they've consistently overperformed people's expectations. So I think that that's like a fair litmus test. So that's probably where I would take the answer to this call, is basically like the true test will be 100 Thieves, and I think Jamada is correct in that. So I don't know. What do you make of that? Yami.
I think that's fair. Like I said, I think 100 Thieves is the team that they have the highest chance of beating. I think for a lot of the reasons that were said, 100 Thieves is, I think, a lot more reliant on hands checking people than I think the other top 4 teams are. And they're very good at it. Like, not to take that from them. They are, I think, probably currently the best team mechanically at team fighting. Do I want to say that? Top 2, I would say, at team fighting right now. And just kind of the mechanical check.
Who's your
but
other
I think
one,
if they...
out of curiosity?
Pardon?
Who's your other one, just out of curiosity? Would you put Fly or TL there? Because it's not going to be C9.
I would say Fly. I would say Fly is currently... I mean, they're kind of just like right now, I would say, the best at everything. C9 might actually have better map setup than Fly. I don't know if I would stick to that, though. I'd have to think more. But what was I saying? Yeah, I think like there's a very solid chance that LYON is going to be good enough mechanically that 100 Thieves can't just do their thing of like committing very hard to a fight, quid, and FBI kind of carry it, that they have really excelled at. As we've seen kind of this year progress, and a little bit of we've seen this year progress. And I had another thing I was going to say, but I forgot it.
It's okay. No, I mean, I kind of put you on the spot by asking if you had like a rebuttal on this stuff, so I'm not too worried about it. But I mean, I do think that and I'm glad that you called it, and that this was sort of our starting conversation, is that like they have been just a really pleasant surprise for the league in this split, especially after they had a pretty rough split one. Obviously, there were a bunch of extenuating circumstances with their ability to get their players here and all that type of stuff, but I've been excited to see that like there's basically 4 teams at the top and nobody else matters trend has not held up. It seems to be kind of challenged, so it seems like there's a little bit more mobility in the league than we thought. So I appreciate it.
I will actually fight back on the more mobility in the league. I do think that LYON was still like they need to do more for me than beat 100 Thieves in a best of 1 to actually prove that like they can be a consistently top half team. Again, for me, they're just the most competitive of the bottom half. But I at this moment, I still don't see a world where they win a best of 3 or a best of 5 against any of the top 4 teams. So until that changes, then I still think that it's like a lot of parity in the league with a very clear top 4, bottom 4.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, and I think that's fair.
There's a world where they
I was
might
gonna-
actually just be top 4 at the end of this week, though.
Yeah,
Cubby,
if they win both
from a
best
stats
of ones.
perspective. Yeah,
Yeah, that could
like
be.
especially if they could beat 100 Thieves. And I get that you're saying like, okay, this is not necessarily indicative of their strength, but like, I mean, that would be impressive to me. I know best of ones, but this league was founded on best of ones, Cubby. Yeah. You know, the other thing that's going to get weird is trying to figure out who the top 4 teams are once we get into this group play for the next 3 weeks. Like, we're still always so used to the format of LTA being like everybody plays each other for weeks and weeks and then, you know, hangs out in like a singular list. But with the group stuff coming up, it'll be interesting to see how that impacts perceptions. So, Yami, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
I want to shout out my friend Happy Blue Guy, who will probably be listening to this on VOD. Yeah, I think that's it.
Have a good one. Catch you later.
Have a good night.
All right. We'll take a quick break right now to talk about NZXT. Thank you so much to NZXT for sponsoring the show. They are a wonderful partner of ours, and they've got some really cool stuff going on, as always, over at nzxt.co/Travis. In fact, up at the top, they're doing something cool where you can get refurbished PCs, curated pre-built PCs that are backed by our 2-year anniversary. So it's pretty cool that they're doing that. That's a great way to get a solid system at a discount. And you can use the code Travis5 whenever you purchase anything over at NZXT. I believe it's anything. Let me know if there's something. Let me know if you go and you try to do it and it doesn't work, because I'm pretty sure it should work on about everything. And I think at one point in time we had maybe an issue with it working on one thing. I just reached out to them and they were able to fix it. So thank you so much to NZXT for sponsoring the show. While you are at nzxt.co/Travis, again, that's without, it's not com, it's not .com, it's .co. Check out the Lift 2 mouse and Function 2 keyboard. We love having them support us with wonderful hardware like the desktop that we're using right now, as well as accessories like their new Lift 2 mouse and Function 2 keyboard. So really fantastic to have NZXT around. They've been we're at, I think, 11 months of our partnership. We started working with them back in June, so yeah, it's coming up. Really fantastic to have them as a Hotline League partner. So again, thanks so much to NZXT. You can check out the link in the description if you're watching on YouTube, or those links that Numi is sharing in the chat if you're watching live. All right, ready for the next caller?
Yep.
We got 504 Caesar with the $10 super chat. Thank you so much. Director Donut for the 43 months. Hope you're doing well. And Mr. Dr. Enchiladas, and I'm craving Mexican food. I'm trying to avoid the desire to order Taco Bell. I've been trying to do less delivery. Ever since I had that Grubhub sponsorship, it was a big problem for me. Yeah. And yeah. Is delivery a big thing in the UK?
Yeah. Of course. And like in London as well, especially, you've got so many different options 24/7. Especially if you're closer to Central, it feels like you can pretty much get anything on tap at, again, any time of day.
When was the last time that you ordered Nando's delivery?
Oh, you know what? For some reason, Nando's near me stopped doing deliveries. I'm not actually sure why. They just stopped. So I haven't ordered Nando's in a very long time. Nando's isn't something I go to frequently anyway, because the chicken's kind of mid, man. There's other good things from Nando's, but I think, you know, my fellow countrymen have perhaps hyped up the tale of Nando's.
I like Nando's. I'm surprised that you think the chicken is mid. Isn't the chicken supposed to be like the highlight of that place?
Well, yeah, it is a grilled chicken like place. All it is, Travis, is I'm Jamaican and Sri Lankan, so I've been raised on chicken my whole life. Jerk, curry, you name it, I've probably had a variation of it because of my upbringing. So going to a grilled chicken place for, like, you know, it's I always mix it up. It's a South African, you know, pepper chicken.
Piri piri, right? Piri piri sauce.
Yeah, like the peri, I like peri peri as much as the next guy, but because I've experienced so many different kinds of seasonings, it's kind of just, you know, top half, but nothing special.
All right. Well, I appreciate the context. Mihir in chat, it looks like he wants to pick a fight with you, though. So, all right. We have our next caller here. It's none other than Speedy Spikes. Speedy Spikes, where are you calling from?
Calling from Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Okay, nearby. The call is from inside the house. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I love that I'm quick to go next. My take was that C9 will win the split off the back of first team All-Pro top, AD carry and support.
Okay. First team, all pro top, 80 carry, and support. So you're like, their jungle and mid are mid, but you like their top, their solo, not solo lanes, their bot and top pretty well. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so the side lanes. Not that they're mid, but just to touch on that point, Blabber and Loki, I don't think they're going to be first team All-Pro. I think that's Inspired and Quitter Quad. I don't think there's a whole lot of evidence so far to say that they'll be first team All-Pro, but the main point of my take is that.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Yeah, is that just the way that I watch C9 play, that they have identity now, and that comes off the back of Thanatos playing really well in the top lane now that lane swaps are gone. Ven is a monster. Jamada kind of alluded to that in the previous call, that he is, I think he could be arguably the best AD carry right now. And Vulcan is doing support team things.
Jamada, you had a big reaction to Sven being the best AD carry right now.
We're just ignoring Gion and Core JJ, or what's the deal? I mean, even Masu individually has been pretty good. Busio, I think, has had like a very,
Yeah.
Compared to probably his own expectations, but bot lane over Fly and TL, I can't see it like that. In the discussion, they're always gonna have very back and forth lanes. Yeah, sure, but if you cards on the table, I'm building a fantasy team. You ask me, who do I want? Sven and Vulcan or Yeon and Core JJ? I'm taking Yeon and Core JJ 100 times out of 100. It's never not happening, I fear. I hear what you're saying with Thanos, though. I do quite like watching him play. Excuse me, I'm still eating.
No, you're good.
See.
We can throw to Cubby if you need a break.
No, it's fine. I like the fact that C9 are throwing him a lot of bones with more aggressive and carry picks, especially lately. In week 2, I think it was a Gnar game and a Gwen game. I can't recall what he played in week 1.
Yeah, I'm done seeing him get Gnar. Frankly, it's his best champ. He's really good at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I can get behind the top lane cool. I can't get behind the bot lane cool at all. As for C9 winning the split through their bot lane, hell no. Through maybe other avenues like top, or maybe a true return to like ceiling form from Blabber. Sure, like I could buy into the story over time, right? I think especially if, as an example, not to continue to be mean to Umpty, but if Umpty stays on TL and keeps on playing like he does, I could see a team like C9 with the staff that they have going into that series with like very clear plans to just abuse Umpty or make him have a bad series and just win a best of off the back of that. So sure, in that aspect, I can kind of get down with like top lane, maybe not bot, but win the split. I think you're running on single digit percentages there. Out of the top 4 teams, I still feel like the clear favorites that are eating up a majority of that pie are still TL and Fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Hotline League. So I'm coming in with my hot take before they go 3-0 this weekend.
Of course.
Beforehand,
That's fine.
I'm not convinced that Fly is at their dominant form that they were last split, and I think there are way more question marks about TL than even their season 1 victory should, give them credit for. So I think the parity between the top 4 is closer than it has been. And I think because of that, Cloud9 has a good chance with their defined identity. They haven't really had that in the past couple of years, and I think with Zen and Vulcan being a solid duo, Thanatos being a rock, not just to be the top lane carry, I think that stability gives the rest of the map agency to play the game that they want to play, which is take grubs, stabilize in the mid game, and take team fights that win.
Cubby, you haven't chimed in here as much. I'm curious what you're thinking.
I mean, I think the big thing for C9 is like it's funny because you make or I know that we're projecting a little bit with what C9 could do this upcoming week. Much like Lions, C9 has actually had a weaker schedule. Like they need to play both TL and Fly in the best of ones this week, and they also face Lion too, who are the strongest of the bottom 4 teams. For me, I actually think Loki's closer to being the first team All-Pro mid than Sven is being the first team All-Pro bot. I think Loki's actually been fantastic so far.
Yeah,
this year, and I like that's been. For me, I had higher expectations for Saint. In one way, I've been surprised about how well Saint's played and has incorporated himself into Lion. I'm a little less surprised with Loki incorporating himself in the C9, just given Thanatos and Reaper. Like, they have a history of incorporating these imports and making them look all right. But I've been a little bit more impressed by Loki's individual play because I had Saint actually ranked higher than him individually, and like Loki has looked really good. Again, my thing for the C9 team is I think that why they're showing strength right now is that Thanatos is just caving heads in the top lane. And I think that makes the game a lot easier when you do have a top laner that pretty much on his own or given one visit when he needs it is winning the lane. And it's not just winning the lane like, oh, he's up a little bit. No, this guy's up a lot. Like he's coming into these fights up like half items, up full items, and it makes life a lot easier for C9 because they're coming to these setups with the winning lane. I think that's been the big thing for C9. But the other trend I'd point out, so for me, that's like the trends in C9 as to why they might look a little bit better right now than what they have looked in the past. But what they've looked like in the past is, I mean, Summer Split, this was a strong team that kind of flubbed in playoffs, right? They were the team that lost 100 Thieves. With even going back to Jojo Pyun, right? They were the team that was supposed to beat or like take down 100 Thieves, right? Like they weren't able to do so. In the like going to Worlds the Split before, I know that was a different roster, but I feel like the monkey that C9 needs to get off their back is to prove they can win best of 3s and best of 5s against the best teams in the league. So again, like as long as it's best of 1, I can point out a few things that are good for C9 that I think are going better for them this split than they have in last splits, but they still haven't got their monkey off that, like their back, right? So I think that's really where I'm looking for in terms of C9. Like they need to beat these quality teams in best of 3s or best of 5s if they do want to prove that they really can be the top dogs. And yeah, they did beat FlyQuest in a best of 3 and split 1, right? Obviously, things didn't go their way though. Like once they got to the bracket, and we still haven't seen C9 like rep international in a long time for C9. So I that's still their goal. And for me, they have to win those big series in order to get back there. And that's really all they have left to prove to me.
I also just very quickly want to say, I think out of all of the top 4 teams, at least by what Loki has showed me and how Blabber plays side lane, they might be the only NA team to me that actually has potential to play things like 1-3-1 and not grief it. With the way that like Loki, for example, his Talia game against Shopify Rebellion, that was a really good example, I think, where to me it shows that C9 are actually a little bit more cognizant of things like lane waves than their peers that they're competing against. And just overall, the champion pool that he's shown so far has also kind of been very, very side lane heavy in this split. I feel like maybe compared to previous splits. So I'm kind of curious about what identity they're going to end up drafting for themselves moving forward. So I think that could actually be a thing to abuse other top teams with if they can actually get out the blocks really hot with some of their early games.
Okay. We'll have to see what ends up happening. I don't know. I really want to believe in this C9. I think that they've been really exciting to watch, and I'm liking. I always am a big fan of Sven. I just feel like he's the type of player that will play League until the keyboard and mouse get ripped from his hands. He just is super dedicated and loves the game and has always been super passionate about it, and so I'm always rooting for him. But I do agree that like there's just a a lot of questions about what's going to happen up near the top, and FlyQuest just seems really, really strong. So we'll have to check back in a couple of weeks, especially as we get into group play. But Speedy Spikes, anything that you want to add here, or anything that you feel we didn't address?
You alluded to some other points. He's been being a grinder. Loki hit rank 1. I know solo queue doesn't always transfer, but I think the mindset is present in the way that it wasn't last year. I know in some of the other C9 content, you could hear some of the dysfunction, I think, attributed to not taking things seriously. I think the leadership that Sven has, and you can see it in Loki, and I know kind of at a narrative point of like having something to prove, right? You guys brought that up of until they do X, Y, or Z, they need to prove that they're capable. And so I think this is kind of like a make or break here for Blabber or Vulcan or Sven to take it more seriously than they have in the past. I had one other point, but I forgot what it was. But
No, you're good. Regardless, I appreciate that you were able to call in and give us a take. Anything you want to shout out?
Shout out you guys. Love the show. Shout out Bluey being able to keep antsy toddlers chill for a little bit. So I was unmuting for a while. Shout out C9. I'll take my victory lap when they win the split.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time. All right. Head off to grab our next caller. Goes Cubby. Thank you so much to Hustbust for the 45 months and Real Foxy 1 for 89 months. That is wild. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Over on YouTube, it says that somebody became a TGI intern, but it doesn't say who, and it says message retracted. So somebody's literally breaking YouTube. We had this issue last week too. It's kind of funny, but shout out to whoever it was that did that if they did it. And if not, then no shout out to them. We got our next caller here. Our next caller is none other than Good Guy Tim 9385. Tim, where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm calling from St. Augustine, Florida.
From Florida. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, so my take was on the orgs, and as I was watching the broadcast this weekend, I was just getting back into it. I've been a long time watcher of the LCS and then the LTA thing. I was a little bit. I still watch, but I'm like a religious viewer. You know what I mean? And so I got off of it a little bit, but I was really watching it this weekend again, just because we were traveling home for my 3-year-old's birthday or whatnot. And so I was just driving the car, listening, and they were talking about how Sven, his win rate with Cloud9 versus Dignitas, or whoever versus Dignitas, and on Dignitas. And it just made me realize how much of a difference it made, the organizations that these players are joining. And my take is basically that I've been a really big fan of Scary Jerry, and also I've been seeing Sturdy come into their own as players over the last 2 years. And a lot of the takes I've seen is just that they're oh, these guys are bad or not living up to expectations. I'm not trying to poop on their teammates or anything, but it's more about the organizations that they're coming into. And the perspective is basically whoever's the top man makes everything, right? Your organization makes everything. The culture, the feeling around you. If everybody's striving to be their best, has confidence instilled with them, with the leadership, then that's going to make a really big difference. And all 5 people pulling in the same direction. The difference in the top 4 orgs and the bottom 4 orgs is that, it's just clear that if you were to go to Cloud9, what are your odds of success, regardless of your difference in talent level compared to going to Dignitas? You're just if Scary Jerry was on Cloud9 or Team Liquid or 100 Thieves or FlyQuest, his odds of success are going way up, in my opinion. But yeah, that's my take.
No, you're hitting on something that took me way too long to figure out, which is just that, I remember in the beginning days of the LCS, and then especially as we started to hit franchising, I would look at these teams and think about my own power rankings, which, are not as informed as back when I worked with Mark or Cubby or whatever. They're more on the analyst side. But I would so often look at the 5 players and be like, this team should be able to do something good with these 5 players. Or C9 lost the offseason, who are these rookies or whatever. And then consistently you would just see a team like Immortals suck, or CLG before Greg got there, and then eventually we saw NRG come in for a little bit. But like, there were just orgs where you could tell that the people that were at that org were not able to find success with any team that you threw together. And I don't ever want to call for somebody to like lose their job or anything like that, but I was always surprised that there was not more movement or more attempts to do anything besides sometimes like a coach swap at these organizations, because they just didn't seem to like figure it out. And what was fascinating to me was that oftentimes this seemed to transcend even, it was no surprise, for instance, whenever a team was spending $3 million or $5 million on their roster, another team was spending like 1 or 1.5, and lo and behold, the team that was 2 or 3 times as much as expensive was better. But like, you'd even see whenever you started to get like into more flat eras of salary spend, that like the bottom teams just could not seem to get it together, even when given great talent. So yeah, this is something that I think we have not done a good enough job, or at least we were slow to start weighing orgs based off of their historical capabilities, even when given like good
Travis
lineups.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't think we would slow on that. I think a lot of fans have been calling for the heads of certain orgs where
I'm not saying fans were. I'm saying that like, dude, was not too long. I think we're good about it now and people kind of wised up, but like, it wasn't too long ago whenever like Dig would throw together like a half decent looking roster and people would be like, I think we could power rank them 5th, which at the time was middle of the pack. And like they would go out there and just suck.
Oh, I wish I could read some DMs to you that I've had with players and orgs, man.
I knew that players figure this out faster than I think like the pundits did, where the pundits would be like, oh, I think they could do this. The players would be like, I don't want to go to that dog shit org. I know I'm going to suck. So
yeah, for a long time, you had teams like you had players that were willing to play for TL Academy over IMT, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of eyeballs on NACL this split because of near airport and some new interest. Like, I'll take Maryville and Dark Zero, like that team, that environment. You're giving Niles and Cat God, people that have like competed in this. I mean, Niles obviously tried to go LCS, right? Those guys won collegiate championships. Corky over there was like built that program up, has experience playing junior hockey. I'll take those guys as developing players over like pretty much all 3 or 4 of the bottom teams. I really will. I think that Maryville, like, they're doing this in multiple games too. They've built a system for developing these guys that very few organizations actually have at the professional level. Like, they've been outperforming what the bottom LTA teams have been doing, even though they, aren't in the position to actually be an LTA squad until if they win this split, right? I think that Scary Jerry going from Maryville to DSG, like, he is much less equipped to do well at DSG than he was at Maryville. I will put the house on that. He had more tools at Maryville. They had a better infrastructure for the players out there. Like, DSG is an org trying to figure it out right now. Like, they have 1 or 2 coaches behind the scenes that could probably help these guys, right? Over at Maryville, like, you've got, I mean, those, like, you talk to anyone at Maryville about their experience. They have access to all the pro teams. They have access to other people competing in other games. I don't think people realize how valuable that is for players to actually, like, that are going through this. You're in an environment, again, in college, surrounded by people that are all really high up in their game, trying to get better at your own game. That is so incredibly motivating in a way that people just do not understand unless you've experienced that. Like, being in athletics or just being in a gym with people. I think it's really, really slept on how at least them as a college have been able to like create a successful program where, I mean, regardless of what players go through there, it feels like at the end, like, there are a lot of players that either get a degree and a nice GPA to go along with it, and a lot of players that have the opportunity to go pro. And some of whom, when they got there, I didn't think they'd have a chance to go pro before, but Maryville makes it work. So, yeah, I think that, like, I see a lot of positive sentiment about Dark Zero and how their players are performing really well in our league. And I think that we should give some credit to the org too. In that case, being a college, and hell, that org, again, they're outperforming what the bottom teams have done in the LTA in terms of developing players for the last handful of years. Like, And so I don't find this to be a hot take at all, because I've been like, I had a front row seat to that, and watching players pick academy teams over LCS teams, and now watching a college beat all these like professionals at what they do. So yeah,
To be clear, I'm not saying this is a hot take in 2025. I am saying
I just
that,
can't
like,
talk about it to the level that I would like to talk about it on a show like this. So yeah.
Historically, I think it has, because for the moment I started to see this was like revenge. You know, I felt so bad for Revenge. He's always going to be a player who I just am like, what could have been? You know, if that guy had ended up on like C9 at some point in time or something. He's a player that I do get sad about, like the obsession with swapping in import players over and over and over again, because I do think that given the right environment, he could have actually flourished, but he was just stuck on Immortals for so long, and there was not really an opportunity for him to move up. So I don't know. I feel it. I'm kind of curious, Jamada. You have a much more global perception than we do, or perspective. What do you see in terms of organizations holding back players?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really disagree with a take like this because there's so many examples throughout. I mean, many points in time, but especially it feels like as a community and especially as people like in the public space, we've become more aware of like orgs that just even I don't want to like outright throw orgs under the bus here, but there's certain orgs that we all know we could think of.
You
that
have previous
just
orgs that you
try
can
a little
mention?
less.
It's safe to mention
No,
previous orgs movie.
No, not really, to be honest with you. But
They're all
you'll have
still
an
here.
idea of what I'm thinking of, right? Like,
Yeah.
even like still here. Like, think, all right, I'll always have time to shit on Rogue. I'll toss in Rogue as an example. Imagine if Rogue picked up magically, like two of the biggest prospects out of last off season, right? Let's say, somehow, some way, they managed to pick up Skumond and they managed to pick up. I mean, Paris has been a little bit more up and down on BDS, but let's just say, for argument's sake, that those are the two, that they managed to pick up instead of Skumond going to G2 and Paris going to BDS. I would put my fucking life savings on Rogue going 10th, even with them on the roster. People's perception, like, they would be ruined by existing on that roster. Whereas Skumond being on G2, we've seen, significant development in just the 4 months that he's been on this team. And then Paris here on BDS, whilst BDS, I think, have suffered structurally because of the swapping out of their jungler, to be honest with you. I think that's the bigger thing that has plagued them directly. The entire narrative shifts when you talk about players on orgs that are performing well historically, or orgs that are like going through troughs and then they pick up a promising player. And I also think like the overall perception is very easy to manipulate, especially with things like preconceived like ideas of, let's say, if Immortals are still in the league, if Immortals picked up the hottest fucking talent out of the NACL, you would probably still see that guy go 0-18 if it was in the old format.
And just that's what happened with Kenvi,
Yeah, right. So this is kind of the thing. It's very difficult to disagree with a take like this because we've seen it so many times, over and over and over. It's not really on the players, and I don't feel like it almost ever is. I'm sure there's going to be, team environments are very complicated and nuanced, right? You never know what's going on between player to players with staff. But first and foremost, I'll always look towards, people in leadership positions if this is something that's going on for a long period of time. So like Dardo in chat brought up Rogue's GM. I don't know how that guy is still employed at Rogue. Same thing at this point for Freddy. Like, Freddy122. No disrespect to these guys, but they've been leading projects that have gone 10th, 9th, 10th, like for 2 years. How are they still there, right? And if they were bringing in young, promising talent, somehow snagging them over some of the more high-performing orgs, then people would think that those players are bad, right? Just because of the way that the results go. So, yeah, very difficult to disagree with this take. It's just about people in positions of power actually just being a little bit more responsible a lot of the time, and that is something that we are lacking very frequently in esports, regardless of what the level is.
Gratchy in chat says, can we get a little less vague about what bottom tier 1 orgs are doing wrong? What I would say is, like, it is difficult for me to understand always what is wrong, because
you want a real example, Travis? Actually, There's a story that I heard from last split of a manager playing MapleStory with their players for like 8 hours a day instead of scrimming, and this team was bad. So
This is an
like if
LTA
you want
team?
like real examples, we're just not being fucking competitive out there.
This is an LTA team?
Yes.
I mean,
It literally is like that easy sometimes, you know? It literally is that easy. Like, we aren't even fucking trying. So, yeah. Yeah.
Can I chime in?
yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
I feel like being a part of a good organization makes you, like, number one, you have to believe. You know what I mean? If you don't believe, you're never going to accomplish anything. So if you're like a bottom tier organization and everybody on the team knows that you're going to lose going in every weekend, like, you're never going to win. Second of all, you have to compete internally. And third of all, you have to improve. So if you're not doing those three teams, you're probably a bad org.
Yeah. Not much to disagree with.
I mean, obviously,
yeah,
those are all true statements. I think. Look, I'm not as privy as Cubby Art is to the MapleStory related drama, but what I was saying before is like, for me, the confusion has come when I don't hear stories like that. When I hear at least this team is trying hard. When I look at, like, there's been many cases where I like all my interactions with the staff at a team feel really solid, and the coaches at a team, maybe I've seen them have previous success or something, and yet somehow the org can't get it together. And for me, that has always felt like it comes from the executive leadership side, right? Where something about how those people are managing the GMs or the coaches or the staff or the environment that they're creating for the teams and the players, or how they're incentivizing players, coaches, staff, general managers, etc. Like, something there seems not great. And I do look at, like, look, at times he has been a controversial figure, but Jack has always been incredibly invested in the success of C9 on every single week. And I know a lot of people disagree with stuff that he's done or his approach to things, but like, that guy fucking wants his team to win. And it's reflected in the way that C9 has had a lot of success. And yes, there are times in which they go on like a streak where they don't lift a trophy for a bit, but like, they have a lot of success. Same thing with Steve. You know, I think Steve is exactly the type of person that is trying to make sure that like the team is winning, and he knows that he's got a bunch of heat on his back from investors and stuff when he's spending a ton of money and not delivering results, and same with sponsors and stuff. So like, for me, I've always taken the lack of success from these major like entities, these organizations that are competing in tier 1, and they're consistently failing to be a lack of attention from the executive side, right? So yeah, that's always been my assumption, but again, I don't hear as much. And by the way, I just want to point out that like, that's true in a world where a coach or GM or whatever it was whatever staff member you were saying, Cubby, is just playing MapleStory for 8 hours a day. Cubby's checked out now. He's refreshing Reddit to make sure he hasn't gone viral. Either way, thanks so much for calling in. Really appreciate it, Tim. Anything that you want to shout out here at the end?
Yeah, I want to say one thing I realized during this conversation is that I understand like why Doublelift didn't want to go to poopy organizations more so now than in the past. Like Travis was saying, in the past, I didn't really understand the power of like organizations and leadership. The things I want to shout out are daily habits, the Wim Hof breathing technique, calisthenics, and hope everybody has a good one.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time. I see DK in chat says, I just found out these games are just for seeding for a group stage within the split. It's so confusing. Yeah, the big thing that happened was that they had to change the format in the middle of the year. So I understand. Like,
we won LEC, you know?
What's that?
We won LEC on the format.
Well, yeah, we went. Okay, Fearless is a thing. Like, everybody wanted us to have a bunch of best of threes so that Fearless was functional for the split, and so they had to make a bunch of changes. And I suspect that this format is not the one that they would have built if they had known that they were going to be doing this whole thing a while ago. So I think that's how that went down, and that's why it's kind of confusing now. But yeah, right now, after this weekend, things get real. Let's put it that way. All right. I think, Cubby, we have how many more callers to go?
We only have one in the waiting room. I'm kind of waiting to see, or I might grab a few more. So if you guys have takes that you would like on the show, feel free to drop them still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to assume we're going to have more than just this next.
Yeah,
caller,
we'll have more
so
than this. Yeah, we'll have more than this.
I will hold off on my final sponsor shout out for a little bit. But yeah, off Cubby goes to grab the next caller. Thank you to all of you for watching. If you feel like you would like to support the show, you can hover your cursor over on Twitch and see if you have a Prime sub available. If you hover your cursor over the screen, a little purple crown will pop up. That will let you know if your Prime sub is available. Maybe you haven't used it, you forgot. Todd Bar, thank you for the Prime. Over on YouTube, you can become a member for just as low as $2.99. And actually, even though viewership has dropped a lot for League of Legends in North America, and that's obviously hit my viewership over on YouTube, my revenue has not dropped too much, and that's mostly because of people in the last 2 years becoming members over there and watching exclusive videos and all that stuff. So I really do appreciate everybody who's supported that. That's helped keep my YouTube revenue going. You know, sponsorship stuff, that's a different direction. Okay, kiwiben is here. kiwiben, where are you calling from?
Hey, I am calling from Rochester, New York.
Rochester, New York. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Okay, so my take is that I think LTA viewership would be saved if Riot convinced Los Ratones to come to NA and compete in Tier 1. Near Airport is not pulling viewership in the same capacity, and therefore I think the crowds would follow wherever LR goes. And I can elaborate on that if you would like.
Boy.
I had plenty of time to make talking points while I was waiting out Travis.
All right, yeah, go ahead and elaborate.
Okay,
There's so many things to get in here. I'm glad we have Jamada on the show for this one.
Okay, so the LTA environment I think is perfect for this because they have that guest slot. And Los Ratones has said on record that they want to make a competitive run at Worlds, no matter where that is, and they're kind of exploring options right now. And I tuned into Tier 2 this past week, and you know, no offense to Cubby or anything, but you know, the Tier 2 viewership in NA for this competitiveness is not there. And I was kind of thinking about, like, you know, near Airport, they're kind of trying to copy Los Ratones and what they're doing and being a streamer team. I was thinking about it, and I think the reason is that they have said that they're just not going to be competitive. Like, if they made the open qualifier and won the slot, that they would just sell it. And I think there's a lot of hype behind Los Ratones' intent to try to go pro, go to a Tier 1 region, make a Worlds run. I think that story is very there. And people love storylines and narratives in the esports scene. I think that would be very compelling to bring a lot of that viewership back into NA, into LTA as a whole. I've been watching LCS since its inception, and I have not seen this level of hype around a team since like 2011 TSM. It's just, I think it's the fact that they stream everything and they're so open about what they do and they want to be competitive, and they also have the fact that they're big streamers on top of this. So I think it would make a lot of sense for them to come to LTA and make a very competitive run. And making a shot at Worlds.
So first question, you know that their roster is illegal for North American play, right?
Because they're all imports, is that why?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So let's imagine a hypothetical world in which they were all allowed. Do you think that would save NA viewership?
No, I think that would ruin it because they'd have to break the rules.
Worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even in a Cubby, what's the import rule in NA? Have they shifted it to 3 imports, or is it still 2?
No, it's 2 out of 5, but there are like other regions that are grandfathered into the 3.
Yeah, it's 2 out of 5, but Oceania and Latin America and Brazil are now kind of part of it too. So you just can't have.
You can have
there are
a third
players
of those
that are
players.
grandfathered, right? So like I think you know Impact, for instance, doesn't count against it. So
well, he's green card now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's been there forever.
Yeah.
So you could not bring all 5 of those players over and drop them in. So the question you said is like, if they could just do this, should they do it? I mean, the challenge is like, okay, let me give just a brief primer, because I know a lot of Cubby and Jamada, and I know this, and I know a lot of people watching know it, but not everybody does. So, for instance, Mark can decide, for instance, I want the format to look like this, or I want our broadcast to look like this, or I want our guest slot to be given to Disguised. Mark cannot, and the LTA cannot, choose to just be like, you know what? Let's bring in T1 this split. Like, they're going to come play over here, or Los Ratones or whatever. That is all governed by the global team at Riot. And they're like, the global team is tasked with caring about the health of all the different regions collectively. Now, if they've cared about North American health or if they've damaged it is a different debate. But they are, generally speaking, like, policing all the different regions so that they can't do things that are advantageous. So, for instance, they need to manage scheduling overlaps and all that type of stuff. The reason why they would not want this rule to exist, or they would not want to break this rule, are probably twofold. One, it's like really difficult because there's been a lot of pushback on import players. We were unhappy with the idea of LMQ just coming over here. It started to feel really uncomfortable if like Team Liquid could just take the T1 roster, buy it out, come bring it over here. It's like, then there's not as much roster identity. There was like a lot of issues like this with Overwatch League, for instance, or StarCraft. And so historically they've had this import rule in place, and the challenge is, okay, let's just bend the rules for Los Ratones becomes really complicated, because like, then maybe China wants to do that, or maybe other regions might want to do. Why doesn't LTA South do that? Because we can get all this viewership. It starts to become really difficult to police who gets that and how they get it and all that type of stuff. So it's very complicated on a political standpoint, and it's really difficult because it's also like, well, why these guys and not other people? Why bend the rules here? So that all starts to become an issue. It sounds like you wanted to say something.
I was just gonna inquire, hypothetically, if they were all NA players, if Los Ratones was an NA region in Tier 2, do you think that this would be beneficial for LTA if they made it in?
I mean, they're an incredibly popular team. So if they were just an incredibly popular team that was able to play within the North American League, then yes, I think it would be really good. I do think there's a question of, where's this viewership coming from? So if you suddenly I think there are actually a lot of Los Ratones fans in North America, but let's say they're like 20%, 15% of the viewership, and you're getting an overwhelming amount of, you're saying higher, Jamada, or lower? Lower. Okay.
Lower. If I know anything about demographics when it comes to European content creators, unless they very specifically cultivate a North American following and audience, and especially in the context of League, I think at the floor it's sitting at 4 to 5%, and at the ceiling, at the absolute ceiling, it's sitting at 15. And I feel like 15 is a very bold.
I think it could be as high as 15, because, and this is obviously anecdotal evidence or whatever, but Jamada, I gotta tell you, I meet so many people who are like, I don't watch LTA anymore, but have you seen the new Los Ratones team? And stuff like that? So
do I. I all the time, right? And I think that people actually kind of forget just how big Mark is, Cadril is, in the space at times. So yeah,
I think he tends to transcend. Yeah. He's an English-speaking content creator, right? And that's why I think that
he does.
His viewership
he does.
But regardless, okay, whatever. Anyway, the overwhelming amount of viewership that Los Ratones, I believe, would bring into the space is not North American viewership. And then this opens up this huge, broad conversation around what is valuable viewership for LTA. The challenge is, if you're going to sponsors and you're trying to get a ton of people to sell, a car, and they have a North American budget, or they only operate in North America, that is not healthy from a financial perspective. It really comes down to what do fans think? there's a weird thing where like I think fans now just care about viewership for the sake of viewership in some sense,
They do.
where
I
it becomes
hate
like
it,
a
man.
They
weird
do.
banner where it's like, oh, this is bad, viewership
It-
bad. Oh, this is
it-
good, viewership good.
You know what comes from Travis too is like when when NACL teams were, you know, canceled, like it wasn't required anymore to have one as an LCS team. Like everyone argued for like viewership and eyeballs, like fans did. Like that shouldn't matter for tier 2 orgs. It should be about the health of making sure that players like are able to make it to the next level. And it's cool that we almost have these like angel investors coming in to save the space in terms of viewership. And don't get me wrong, like broadcast side, it makes life so much easier, so much better, so much more fun for us. Like there should be more access to partners and funding and stuff that like we can do. Like it's all positives, but the metric for what makes a tier 2 org or league be successful should not be how many eyeballs are on it. It should be, you know, how competitive is the league, how many players are able to go to the next level, how much interest is there from the orgs. I just don't feel that connects from the orgs, and I don't feel that connect from the fans either. Like they want to watch their favorites, which is cool, but those leagues have always been fun to me to see like who's up and coming and who's up next. And I think the fact that we have established people involved is great, and they're good enough to not only be involved but to win too. Like I'm not saying they don't deserve to be involved, but the interest for me is just so not with them. And the interest for me is like so not with eyeballs either. Like it should be that the health of the leagues just being like rated in different metrics, which I feel like fans just do not care, do not see about because they see all the numbers going down. So anything where a number goes up is great.
Yeah,
It really feels that way sometimes.
Let me ask. I see a Rexello in Twitch chat saying they should bend the rules to save the region, and I know that you're kind of positioning it similar.
It
Kiwi
won't-
Ben is like
okay,
this is a good idea
can-
to save the region. I want to ask
Can I tap in?
really quickly, Jamada. I just for the
Yeah.
purpose of this, what does saving the region look like, and how is this meant to save the region?
I kind of alluded this a little bit, but I think making a really competitive run at Worlds is what I think would save the region. Like when FlyQuest took Gen G to Game 5, that was the whole conversation for like months after Worlds ended, and that was awesome. I think something like that would really bring a lot of attention back to the scene, and not just in terms of like numbers, but also the fun that like Cubby was talking about, the enjoyment factor of these teams busting out really competitive strats and picks and making the games really exciting. I think that's what would save the region, is showing that we can compete on a global scale.
These two things aren't intertwined though.
Yeah, that's my confusion.
Yeah.
These two things operate and on in two different buildings, right? Like the success comes in metrics, like Cubby was alluding to, for a broadcast and for a league, because again, the broadcasters of the league, the success of the league, it is all dependent on your perception, right? Is it performing well at Worlds? Is it having 100k concurrent viewers? But like being super entertaining, so that sticks around. Like that's really what you have to get to the bottom of. I think just not to be doomer about a product that I work on, but even on the NLC, right? Last year the NLC was concurrenting around 1,100, 1,200, like at the most, and then it would maybe peak 3, 4, 500 more. Since Los Ratones have been in the league, obviously those numbers are a lot higher. On days where Los Ratones are not playing, the numbers are pretty much sat in like the 2,000 to 2.5k region. Now, obviously, we're talking about the LTA, slightly bigger scale, etc. But I think you would be very disingenuous to say that even with Los Ratones being in the league, the actual core viewership would go up. And I would actually make the comedy argument here that there's actually room for it to probably decrease. And because Kadrill's not really done much to interact with the NA fan base, like proactively in the same way that he has with obviously the LEC because he's from here, and with the LCK and with the SE community who obviously takes in all of the eastern regions. So I actually think in weird ways, in terms of success by metrics of viewership, yes, if you were to include the co-streaming numbers in, fantastic. The league is saved. would it magically make the league more competitive? I wouldn't see a world where Cadrel fields a team in a league that he doesn't believe to be fighting for, top 2, 3. So sure, but that's all hypothetical. You never know what could happen if you're, going into a project that is completely away from the things that you've been used to doing. I beg pardon already. So yeah, I don't feel like, again, depends on when you say saved, what exactly you mean, because I don't think it would. I would pretty much argue that in a similar case to like here, if Los Ratones weren't, or like were finding, enough success, but maybe they eventually just left. If Los Ratones leave after a couple of years, because maybe, running a tier 1 organization is expensive. It is a generally speaking, non-profit making business decision. Cadra's a money man. He is a businessman first. He has been really successful at maintaining himself under all of these, metrics. I don't want to pocket watch and do any of that shit. But going to tier 1, especially if it not being in Europe, would just be detrimental to him. So if he was in this weird world, let's say he had an offer and that was the only offer, so he took it. If he loses, a couple of million over the course, he's just going to leave. And then all of his viewership goes with him. They're not going to stay in the league. Because these days, the broader viewership base now, as we were kind of mentioning earlier, and Cubby was kind of alluding to, it's not about organization fan bases these days. The organization fan bases aren't the majority anymore. People follow players. That is just the fact of the matter. The extreme example of this is obviously T1, right? But even in the high ends of the LEC and in NA, you see plenty of examples of this, right? There's plenty of Whippo fans, there's plenty of Inspired fans. There's probably plenty of Core JJ fans, and then you come over here, it's like all of G2, like individually, if they all split up, people would follow them instead of staying with G2. G2 has, thankfully, the kind of exemption rule maybe to this. I feel like that org will always be kind of popular, but they would lose a lot of popularity if Caps just decided to fuck off, right? So yeah, that is kind of my perspective on it all. With your take, I don't think it would really save the region in the way that you'd think. And I definitely do agree. I mean, I have my own problems with Double Lift's project overall, because it doesn't really seem like their heart collectively is in actually improving the league or its competitiveness. It really just seemed like they were trying to bandwagon off of the hype of scrims getting streamed and hey, there's 2 or 3 content teams in Europe, maybe we can do this. But it's like, as respectfully as I can say this, Double Lift isn't pulling 20k viewers anymore.
You're setting us in a very different direction about it, which I'm not afraid of having that conversation, but there's so much to dive into on the Cadrel stuff that I don't want to open up the near airport stuff yet.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
So here's the funny thing. Jamada, I agree with most of what Jamada said, almost all of it. That being said, if the global Riot team went to Cadrel and went to Mark Z, and they said, Mark and Mark, M&M's here, we would love to extend an exception that would allow Los Ratones to compete in North America for 2 years. 100% they say yes. Both sides say yes. Cubby, you're crazy. You're so crazy.
I'm shaking my head because as a fan, I'd hate that. It's so bullshit to give one team an exception and like to not have the rest of the league.
They did this with fucking Disguised, Cubby.
Well, they picked their guest slot, but again, I'd love to have the org involved, but you would have to change up the roster too. And I think that the roster matters a lot for the popularity of that team, even if most of it comes from Cadrel.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not saying that like they should do this or that like I want Riot to go change their rules to let Los Ratones in. I'm saying that like because we talked about, Jamada talked a little bit about like, would this be worth it for Cadrel? And like we talked about it, like if this is worth it for viewership for North America. I think long term, no, but I do think that in the short term, like you don't say no to that offer, even if you feel like it's not a solution to save the league for both sides. Because I do think Cadrel's problem is that he's going to start to run into a like, okay, cool, I'm just hanging out in tier 2 and there's like only so much you can do with it. You can't actually make it like the big shit or whatever. And I do think like the LTA issue is that it needs something. Like the fucking rebrand was definitely not it. So like I think that like in the short term, this is something to help extend both of these projects while they are trying to figure out like what their long-term solutions are going to be.
Nah, I just think that if I'm Cadril, I'm looking for every way possible to buy out the rogue slot because like for real, like he's already just a hero of the league scene and the EU like scene. If he buys out the rogue slot, that guy is the second coming of Jesus in those fans' eyes. Like, let's be honest. Like there's no better move for him than to buy out the rogue slot.
I'll start lying on his name for him. I'll start saying I saw him pick up a cup of water and it turned to wine. I'll do it.
He's been cleaning feet, man. Like there's no one's business, you know.
Okay, let's say that he can't do that though. You're posing an alternate scenario, which is not part of this hypothetical that I've created.
Yeah,
you're gonna really You're gonna really tell them they can't come. You're gonna be Mark Zimmerman. You're gonna be like,
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't tell them I can't come as Cadril. If I I don't think I say yes. If I'm being honest, I mean, I hate to say it, but I feel
says
like
yes in a heartbeat. If his options are only tier 2,
he doesn't.
You gotta change the roster. Like that roster matters a lot for the popularity of the team.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm talking about if he can maintain the roster. If global allows,
then it's bullshit that like they give him an exception like that. Like there's no him. There's no way that he comes in and it's winning.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying because we went back and forth on whether or not this makes sense, and I think while it doesn't make sense on the global side or anything like that, I do think it makes sense for both LTA and for Cadril.
I don't think it makes sense for Cadril. I'm really in the house of I don't think he would. It would.
I think it betrays half his fan base.
I think not only does it betray half his fan base, but and again, I'm not going to pretend like I'm like a close friend of Cadril here, but I feel like I have a pretty good read on the guy in terms of what he wants for this Los Ratones project, and I feel like versions of this project where it goes to NA are against what he actually would like to see, right? And then there's also the financial side of it on top of all that, which I feel like you would hemorrhage more money as Cadril going to NA than you would remaining.
He would break even. Like Riot gives enough money to the guest spots for them to.
He would. But I mean, he has to look at himself. Like he is one of the biggest streamers on Twitch. Like he's a brand. Like I know that his brand is closely tied to this, but I feel like it would like he has to worry about that a lot, like almost a lot more than like where he's at in terms of like the league he plays. And I think that factors in way more than like just the hey, we want to compete for tier 1, which obviously I think that I'd want to as well in his shoes. Like there's nothing else for him to prove in tier 2 after like one split. So that's important, but I think his brand and the team and like who's on it is a little bit more important than that. For me, that's like the whole hypothesis of all these content creator projects in the first place, you know?
It sounds like you're saying he doesn't want to compete in tier 1, he wants to compete in LEC.
Yes.
Like it's not about tier 1, it's just about LEC.
I think if I had to wager a guess, I would say his heavy preference would be being in the LEC. And I mean the fact of the matter, I don't fully know how mergers and such take place in an A because I imagine the bureaucracy might be a little bit different just because it's in a different part of the world. But I feel like being in Europe, trying to get like because franchise slots are expensive. So unless Cadril can magically, find a couple of partners and fork out, 20 plus mil for one of these franchise slots, I feel
is that USD or euros?
Jamada, I gotta tell you, I doubt that there's going to cost much to get an LTA slot right now.
I agree. I definitely agree, but I also feel like the return on like investment, not just financially, is not worth going over to NA.
Here's the truth, Jamada. What if he could get it for free? Because I got to tell you, we have a team in our league, not even the guest spot, that is just here that Riot could do with whatever they want. They own the slot.
The 100 Thieves slot,
yes.
Right? Yeah.
Dude, 100 rats. See, Travis, I'm just imagining a world where Cadril like buys out Rogue slot and is like, the good rats are taking over. Like this team ratted out like their way to 10th every split.
Yeah. We're talking about two different things here because I'm not going to argue with you that Cadril should take Rogue Slot if he has the ability to take it. Like, that is just obviously the best possible scenario for everyone involved.
I'd wait a year or two for that to happen, by the way, too. Like, things are
I-
pretty
I
healthy
also-
over
then
there in
just
Europe.
tell NA you'll come over
I
for
also-
a year.
I also really think no, fuck that. If I'm K-Drool, if I can, obviously the sooner I can get into a major region, if it like everything seems like it's gonna fall into place well, fantastic. But even from the way that things looked at the start of the year and even how they've transpired so far, I would probably want to stay in tier 2 for, closer to 2 years than 1, which might seem really weird, but I feel like there's far more ways to, monetize yourself at a guaranteed profit for those first 2 years before actually making that jump and going to tier 1. I feel like the risk versus reward factor is just not there. Especially in the case of going to NA.
You know the Los Ratones business more than I do, but like I can't imagine. Like, he's got so much viewership, and like his name is so big that like I cannot imagine that he cannot make a huge profit by doing this. And even though the esports scene in North America is crazy, and our politics and everything are going wild in terms of economic stuff, like North American sponsors are still way more valuable than European sponsors in terms of the budgets that they have access to and all that type of stuff. Like, I don't think that it's a financial issue for him to come over here. The slot's going to be cheaper. I think he'd make more money, etc. I'm more open to. I mean, I'm not trying to say that you are the expert in this field more than I am, but like for me, it's just hard to see a world where this is not something that would make sense for him. But to Twitch chat's point, we are just writing fan fiction right now. Like, this all relies on Riot doing a crazy global change that they'd have to bend the rules for this, and other regions would have to figure it out and all stuff. So.
You know what I'm waiting for, Travis? I'm waiting to see if he's invited to EWC or not. I feel like his big tickets right now are getting an invite to that, and then getting invited to like the K Corp Red Bull invites where they fill up the stadium, and that's really that. Of course, they were involved last year. I expect them to be involved again this year, but I feel like those are the big tickets where I'm really, really curious to see if he's going to be at EWC. Like, honestly, I am.
Also really weird if Riot allows that, because then they are allowing a third-party organizer to have in some ways a better product.
There's appeal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Whatever. I don't want to talk about.
What I'm looking
I don't
out
want to
for.
open up the EWC can of worms, but
I know.
This was a really interesting conversation, and I'm super glad that Jamada just happened to be in the chat earlier so that we could have him on for this, because we needed a European voice for this. kiwiben, we talked for a long time on this. Anything that you would want to throw in here?
I kind of forgot at the start that this was a completely illegal move, but so, sorry about that part, but for the most part, I think this was a very interesting conversation because I've been following esports for a very long time, like I said, and I think this legitimately is the most excited I've been over esports since the TSM CLG rivalries back in the day. So I really hope they do something and go to a tier 1 region. I just don't know where it's going to be. I hope it's EU, honestly. I think that would be the best move for them. But in some hypothetical world, if they could come to NA, I would legitimately fly to California to go see them. It'd be awesome. It would never happen, but it would be so cool.
I think, look, if I'm Mark, I'm trying to figure out something to do with them, even if it's like a show match, even if it's something like
show matches would be great.
Yeah, they
for sure.
They got to figure something out. All right. Anyway, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
Shout out r/anime, greatest subreddit on the internet, not affiliated, BTW, and shout out you guys for having me on, and Los Ratones, of course, XDD. Thanks, Travis. Love your show. Been watching for a very long time. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much. Catch you next time. We had a weeb on the show. Cubby, you gotta fucking vet this stuff next time, okay? No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna take a quick break. Jamada, you're not one of them, are you? I had to fire my last host because he was too much of a weeb. He had to go get a downgraded job over at Riot Games. All right, I'm going to take a quick break to air a little video from my sponsor, me talking about my sponsor. So we'll be right back. This video is brought to you by PrizePicks, the best place to win cash while watching your favorite esports or sports. So I'm going to show you right now how this works on the app. It's super easy to use. So maybe I like Jojo Pyun at more than 9.5 deaths over the first 3 games of his series. And maybe I believe Mickey X is going to get less than 31 assists. I'll go in and hit finalize lineup, where it'll show me that if both these things end up coming true and I play an entry fee of, let's say, $20, I'm going to end up winning $60. PrizePicks is available in over 40 states, including California and Texas. And if you sign up, use that link below. It's a big thing that you can do to help me. You can use code Travis whenever you make your first lineup of $5 or more. Win or lose, they're going to give you $50. Now, please only choose to play PrizePicks if you can do so responsibly, but doing so and signing up does help my channel very much. And you can actually join the discussion with other TGI viewers in my Discord. We have a PrizePicks channel. If you're trying to get into it, that's a great place to start. So thanks so much to PrizePicks for sponsoring this piece of content. All right, and we are back. But thank you so much to PrizePicks for sponsoring this. I hope you all have, you know, if you're feeling like you're in the position to do so, you want to give it a whirl, check out the PrizePicks channel of my Discord. You can join my Discord, discord.gg/Travis. We have people on there sharing their lineups all the time, saying who makes crazy lineups that are destined for failure, or sometimes somebody comes through and gets something crazy going. So, and people giving feedback and sharing stuff and all that stuff. So go check out the PrizePicks channel on Discord if you're looking for some advice or help, or you have questions about how to get involved in that. And please, 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 not to quote Sabrina, but use code Travis when you sign up, and also use my link because they need to know that you're coming from me. Otherwise, I've wasted all my time just talking to you. All right, we're going to get into our final call of the night. Cubby's gone off to grab them. A big shout out to Sherigan Chidori. Thank you for the Prime. Super appreciate it. And that's about it. But I appreciate everybody who has supported us. I'll hang out on stream for a little bit afterwards. If anybody wants to chill with me, we can talk about random stuff while I open Magic the Gathering packs. Hopefully we'll see people from... we'll see some people hanging out in Santa Clara this weekend with me and Apollo. It'll be fun. So, Jamada, are you excited for Riftbound?
It's the League card game, right?
Yes.
Riftbound. Card games have never really been something that I've ever at any point been super invested in. So
Until
I can't say I'm
now,
excited.
When League of Legends is announcing it.
I am, however, excited for the people who are excited, because I'm still a nerd at the end of the day. Even though it's not my cup of tea, it still makes me happy that people are finding more stuff to spend their money on.
He's a big consumerism man. Jamada is nothing if not a capitalist. All right, rawnblade is here. Rawnblade, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Sydney, Australia.
Sydney, Australia. What do you want to talk about? I by the way, I appreciate that we have all the corners of the globe right now going through with not all of them, but I guess a lot of them, between Australia, LA, and London. I'm pretty sure you could just draw like a nice little line it would go
That's
through.
probably
All
like
right.
a good little, like,
yeah. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So basically, I want to give Jamada the chance to complain about Fearless becoming permanent, and also discuss why he is absolutely wrong.
Wow, Jamada, I didn't know you were a Fearless anti.
Oh yeah.
I started as a Fearless anti. Yeah, Cubby's hiding.
That's not me.
Cubby doesn't even want to.
Yeah.
He doesn't
on a schedule.
I was
want to be involved.
Literally about to say the same thing, which was that. Wait, Cubby, do you have the Elgato light that turns off for a little bit every now and then?
I do, but I think that it's on Wi-Fi with other Elgato lights, and I feel like there's the program that turns it off.
Mine does the same thing. It literally just did it a second ago. I can't.
Oh,
I haven't
really?
figured out how to fix it. Yeah, so I'm glad that we're both experiencing these problems. All right. Anyway, I agree though with Cubby's decision to disappear, because I was a Fearless anti-Jamada, and then the mob fucking showed up at my doorstep with pitchforks and stuff. It is like a dangerous thing to say.
I will never be pressured.
like you might be safer like trying to tweet negative things about K-pop bands or Taylor Swift or something than saying
just
that
T1. Just type, Gruma shouldn't be the starter for
all right.
T1 on Twitter.
We're gonna
Hit that
this will be good
hashtag.
for YouTube comment
Really gets
engagement.
his rocks
Yeah.
off, like stuff like that.
Okay, gosh, I don't want to take up too much of the show. I could be here forever talking about this.
No,
I've
it's
thought
fine.
very
I'll lean back
extensively.
and chill.
Look, I've thought very extensively about this, and I think the thing that I also noticed was when I tweeted what I tweeted, because that is where most people know that I have a very big disagreement with Fearless generally. That specific tweet had basically no nuance to it, and pretty much just said, "This is really only an entertainment value change," and that's it. Again, there was no nuance to that tweet. That is obviously at least mildly disingenuous, if we're going to be honest. Let us know what you get in the packs, by the way.
Oh no, this is a viewer sent me
is
this
that
card, and so I'm putting it into my
okay.
binder while I kick back and listen to story time with Jamada.
So I'll talk about the positive things for me with Fearless first, right? First immediate positive is obviously the fans are happy, right? Fans are happy, fans stay, fans are unhappy, they eventually leave. Fans make the products work. If there's no fans, there's no sponsors. If there's no sponsors, there's no money. If there's no money, kaput, all of us go homeless. So yeah, fantastic. This as a change in terms of band-aiding a clear, broad community feeling is good. In terms of the strategic depth, sure, I think there is arguments to be had around traditional draft against Fearless and the overall strategic, qualities that both of these two forms of drafts have. However, I am of the belief that Fearless, no matter how long we keep Fearless around, is more prone than regular draft to provide lopsided drafts, which undeniably reduce the quality of the game. And to me, I am a gameplay purist. Quality of the game on our screen is always going to be my priority. Personally, I understand that I am in the minority with this particular POV, right? People, your average viewer, they don't really care about that. They're there, they're following their favorite player. They want to see them play their favorite picks, da-da-da-da-da. That's all of what Fearless provides. So that is a one-to-one discussion on Fearless, specifically with against like normal draft. Beyond that, though, the reason why I don't actually like Fearless draft is that to me, Fearless is an answer to multiple compounded choices by the balance team over the course of many, many years. This is an issue 5-6 years in the making of the overall philosophy of the balance team was to achieve what I've been dubbing as air quotes balance equilibrium, which is getting as many champions in a healthy state as possible, playable, and also keeping as few champions out of pro jail as possible. And if you're not familiar with the term pro jail, to summarize it very quickly, it's just basically champions that are so good in pro that they have to be, but they are really good in pro, but are mediocre to even bad at times in solo queue, but they have to be gutted because of their presence in pro play. That is what we would. Azir historically has been a champion. Thank you for making me expand on this.
Yeah.
Lee Sin in like the older seasons. Rise. Oh my God, Rise was like the pioneer of pro jail for many years. I wouldn't say someone said K'Sante. I don't think K'Sante's in pro jail outright, but he's definitely on the fence. But these are examples of champions in pro jail. So anyway, their balance philosophy has been what I just stated, right? This state of balance equilibrium. And honestly, they've done a really good job. They have done a fantastic job. I think since season 13, we have had a relatively well-balanced game in the grand scheme of League of Legends. And if you disagree, you either didn't play the game back then, or you just hate the game and still play it. I don't know what else to tell you. However, what does a game that is actually very close to balanced with this many champions end up becoming at the highest levels of play? You start seeing the same sets of champions over and over and over again, because the philosophy goal has effectively been achieved by the balance team. In the broad scheme of things, you've obviously got outliers. Things like system changes will push champions above certain lines and below certain lines. But generally speaking, you're going to have champions that remain pretty consistent in pro play. Enter champions like Cassante. Enter combos like Lucian, Nami, and Zeri Yumi getting traded for years at a time, not just months, and not just stretches of a few patches, years. Because these champions are not fun to watch, and because in the case of Cassante, who I think has actually single-handedly breeded a majority of this disdain, comically enough, is also, or at least at release, was horrendous to play against. We end up in these situations where people get frustrated at the meta not changing. How does the meta change? Through balance and through system changes and through direct champion changes. And those things haven't really been happening to the extreme to shift the meta over, these last 2 years, which has gotten us to this point where Fearless seemed like a good idea to try out. We introduced Fearless into the pro space. It was wildly popular because it's, of course, eliminated the possibility of, especially in series, seeing the same sets of, let's just say, at absolute peak of same meta drafting, you would see about 16 champions, like in a 3-game, best of 5. Let's say it's a 3-game stomp, right? That would probably be around the variance that you see. Fearless, by definition, is going to give you more than that by the end of game 2. And I think that is obviously good for the viewers. Again, I think there's many, many arguments that you can have for standard draft versus Fearless draft in that specific aspect. But the point still kind of stands to me now. Here we are in this meta that has generally not shifted too much. It's definitely changed a little bit since the start of the year, right? There's some new champions that have come in because of different balance changes. Things like the Neferi and the Gwen, very good examples of recency. Sion, because of things like the Jace staying really popular and anti-tank champions being kind of poor in the meta right now. Fantastic, we've had a small shift. But I will always say, if we have the exact same meta in a year's time, what has Fearless achieved? Now, the reality of the situation is we probably won't have the same meta, and the meta will probably shift a little bit. But what Fearless actually does is introduce the same sets of champions, just more frequently. It doesn't, so far, by the numbers that we have, it has not, by a noticeably marked increase since the last time that I checked numbers, increased the total amount of champions that we're seeing overall. We are just seeing more champions that we would maybe see that are considered A+ or A tier more frequently just because of the design of what Fearless Draft does. And if that is all viewers want and they're content with that, then no problem. But I feel like the sacrifices made to quality of pro play and the also hypothetical sacrifices of cool, broader sweeping balance changes like we used to get back in the day, but in a much more we have learned from things like the Juggernaut patch way, are things that we're going to miss out on if Fearless is what stays and we don't get these kind of, class or systematic changes to champions. I think considering that we're in, a 3-split system as an example, I think we're missing out on being able to have, cultivated or artificial metas actually created by the balance team where they want to see Major strong for a little while, so they kind of just make them a little OP, right? For 3 or 4 months, and then we're into the next split, so things change again. It is certainly a little bit more unreasonable than just tacking Fearless on top and keeping the balance philosophy the same, because, if you have a larger amount of champions playable at any given time, then you're appealing to as many potential players as possible. So I understand that aspect of the balance completely, and I'm never going to disagree with that. But at the end of the day, Fearless is a band-aid fix to an issue which, is a symptom of the philosophy that Riot applied to their balancing for years. So yeah, I think it's a very nuanced conversation. I think people were very, very, very quick to attack people who were in the anti-Fearless stance. It seemed to be a much more polarizing decision than I had personally realized. But at the end of the day, viewers do come first, and if they believe that Fearless is a far more entertaining version of League of Legends to watch, and they want it to remain permanent, then that is obviously at Riot's discretion to listen to their viewer base on that. I would personally say that keeping it permanent, or as of right now, it's just for the remainder of this year. There's no like further calls for it to remain post 2025. Though if we know Riot and their overall habit of jumping into things that are positive, likely it is they'll do it for 2026. I think it will end up losing its novelty, which then just rounds us all the way back to square one, unfortunately. So who knows? I think that we should be kind of just cycling it in and out, right? Fearless 1 split, fearless no split, fearless 1 split, fearless no split. Because if it's permanent, then I think people are going to get very fed up and frustrated if the meta happens to stay relatively the same. But this is all on the balance team and all on their direction of how they handle game balance.
Rawnblade, you wanted to prove him wrong.
Yeah, I said to come with the whole call. I've actually got to run off almost straight away.
Oh,
apologies. No. So didn't know
You
how
spent
long
too long
Jamada was
talking.
going to talk
Wow.
for there. So, but no, I think first off, I just want to talk about game quality because I think this is the strangest argument people make. Because to me, it's just like draft is a part of the game and it has always been a part of the game. And so if you change the rules of drafting, some teams are better at that and therefore have better have more lopsided drafts as a result, and so they have better outcomes. I think the idea of game quality is really subjective, and it harkens back, I think, to previous discussions, where it used to be like people used to think a perfect game was the way Korea played, where there were no kills and everyone just moved around the map in an orderly fashion, and China played terrible League of Legends because they just fought all the time. Like, for me, game quality, I basically just think that's like a made up thing that like people who, and I understand for you, right? You watch League of Legends every day. Like, you watch so many games of League of Legends. I can't even imagine how many games of League of Legends that you, Cubby, other analysts watch, right? And so I get that for you, there is probably like a preferred version of how things could go or whatever. But like, there is no version of reality as a League of Legends fan where Canyon playing Zed, I consider that lower game quality than if Canyon was playing Sejuani for the 100th time. Like, actually, Canyon's maybe a bad example because he plays lots of stuff. But like, you know what I mean? Like, you're saying that, we haven't had that many more champions this year, but show me the game last year where Canyon played Zed. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that...
I feel that's a bad faith argument, though. I do feel like... Carry on, but I do feel like that is a bit of a bad faith argument.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know. So for me, it's kind of like there is no perfect version of what a League of Legends game looks like. There is no ideal game quality. And so the idea that by people that, that we're lessening that, or that's like something that needs to be upheld, I guess, like I said, unfortunately, I'm so, like, the last conversation went longer than I expected, so I don't have much time to stick around. But I think that I would just say the real turning point for me with Fearless, because I have to say I'm a big, like, T1 Rocks Tigers is my favorite series of all time. The draft strategy in that series really, like, I will tell that story to anyone who'll listen, right? And so I was really stressed with Fearless about losing that kind of tactical work. But the day that it turned around for me is I was watching some near airport scrims and they were not playing Fearless. And I watched a matchup, and then the next draft rolls around and I'm watching the next game and it's exactly the same matchup. I was just like immediately turned off. Like, it was like, I think Travis talked about the whole idea that Riot had with Earth, where, people played less League of Legends after they had Earth turned on because they got so addicted to Earth. Like, that's kind of how I felt coming back to, like, non-fearless drafting. I had this moment of, like, oh my gosh, I have to watch this again. Like, please, this is so... I'm just like, this is so boring, and I just don't want to see this again. I want to see them playing different champions. So that was a real, like, moment for me where I went, the trade-off of getting to see more champions, and even if it is more similar type champions or more champions that are S+, A+, or whatever, it's still better than seeing the same matchups over and over again. And maybe that's particularly because that's like, I'm watching the airport, I'm watching Double Lift, and ADC is one of the most, like, common roles for, like, matchups remaining stagnant. But I don't know. I'm sorry that I don't have more time to, like, battle it out with you. But to me, it's just kind of like, I also just wanted to shout out that I think your point that, instead Riot should be creating, like, specific metas where things are, like, deliberately unbalanced for a while, or deliberately balanced in a certain way for a while to lead to certain outcomes. To me, I don't see how that's a solve, or I don't see how that's a better outcome that is less likely to affect game quality. I think I also think it's kind of... makes it very hard for teams to team build if all of a sudden, just for 3 months of the year, their player, all of a sudden the meta just happens to fall in a place where one of their players doesn't play any meta champs.
You would have a roadmap for that, like we used to have back in the day. So that is the immediate solve. Like you would always know what, as long as it's handled properly, because we would always know what was coming next year by like October, or like before off season usually even starts, right? So at the very least on that specific front, that's why I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it feels weird to me. I mean, obviously I know in my head that of course Riot has things that they're trying to achieve, but it feels weird to me to think that like freaking October is like, okay, next year people that can play these 3 majors are going to be the best players in the world. Like that, I don't know. I don't love that idea. Although, and maybe I came in like season 5, so maybe I'm kind of missing, some of the history there, and maybe it has worked in different ways in the past.
That was Juggernaut. That was the Juggernaut year.
Yeah, that's literally that Worlds is basically when I started paying attention. The best, by the way, best content year for League. Those documentaries they did about players in that Worlds were incredible. Anyway, sorry, Travis and Cubby.
No, it's fine. I think Cubby and I have talked about this stuff a ton in previous episodes,
so exactly.
I'm glad that you had a chance to kind of go in on that with Jamada rawnblade. But
yeah, I'm pretty aligned with Jamada. I will say that I'm sure Jamada felt this too in your call, and like by no means do I say this like just like
no.
Ripping you as a caller, but it's very clear that like you have different priorities than what I do as what I want to see for an entertaining game. So like when you say like I see another matchup or like a repeat matchup for the next game and like don't find that interesting at all, sometimes I'm like, that could be the most interesting thing of the game because like something went tragically wrong that caused the game to go super wrong, or hey, this person like really misplayed this aspect, so like can they play it better this upcoming time, right? I think that fans were really quick to write off the value of what they're now calling classic draft, and sometimes we saw those handshakes for a reason. And also, I still think that there was a lot of variety. It's just that the power picks were picked more, but you still were forced to, in a series, maybe switch up bans to like have a different power pick go through. Like then that could change a lot in the draft, right? So it's not like every game was the same. It's just that you're guaranteed to not have it be the same. And everything Jamada said about like fan value and everything I get, but I, for sure, kind of like what Jamada said, like I'm in the minority where game quality matters to me the most. That it sounds very familiar to stuff like I've said, because I am in the minority in the sense that I care about game quality. I think that Fearless guarantees that it's a decrease of game quality no matter how you cut it. And that's okay. And I think that's really like what I've come to, is I can still appreciate the fun of Fearless. But yeah, no, we aren't going to play the best League of Legends game in front of us every game now. It's just how the format is.
And I think that interest in the matchups being played again and again holds for a point, but I think, and I guess like Jamada would argue if you balance differently.
Yeah, it's balanced.
It's kind of like I think like at Worlds there were times where I loved that, watching like certain matchups play out again and again. You're seeing different of the best players in the world try it, and you get to appreciate what Viper is doing that no one else is doing. But like over a year, over 3 years, like over these time spans where it's just like I'm seeing those same matchups again and again and again and again.
Yeah, I don't want to go in circles, but that is really just the fix, right? Like champions shouldn't exist in a meta for over a year, right? In the exact same state, at the exact same level of priority. At what point, as the balance team, do you step in and go, okay, we need to either hammer this down, or we need to go look at some stats, see what's maybe underperforming generally, but good into these champions, right? And maybe like just give them a couple of love tap buffs just for the sake of trying to get people interested in looking at other direct answers instead of just looking for handshakes. But it never really seems like we get anything like this. Recently, actually, I will say I'll credit Freak on the specific point. I think it was patch 25.6. They're looking into just buffing champions that are either already doing good but just have a low pick rate to just put them on people's radar. Stuff like this, like ideas like that are good. Like get people playing champs that are strong, that aren't like being picked up. Get people, picking champs that are maybe underperforming but can perform well when their numbers are in a good spot. That kind of mentality does get us out of these like rut metas where everything is just the same for like 2 years.
Yeah, buff the Cassante killer. All right. I'm so sorry. I gotta go, Travis. I don't
No.
want to be the one
I was
running
gonna
out of the
wrap up.
show.
Anything
Appreciate
you
the
want to
call,
shout out?
Ron Boyd. Yeah.
Yeah, just quickly, like a positive and negative. Negative is I'm just begging people who spend their lives talking about League of Legends to watch the videos of the people they're talking about. Cadril literally released a video last week where he said he would quite happily come to NA if it was possible. So just putting that out there. On a positive note, I really think like become a YouTube member. There's heaps of stuff on there. You know, Travis is really making it worthwhile, I think. There's a video where he tells you how much he earns, which, you know, obviously the spicy stuff, but equally just the fact that like you get all the interviews as soon as he's uploaded them rather than when they get released. And actually, I mean, Travis doesn't advertise this a lot, but there's quite often videos from a busy weekend that don't get released to the public channel. And so I'm, you know, quite often coming across videos that, you know, didn't make it that much to light, but just I assume because, you know, the algorithm or whatever didn't work for them. But they're super interesting as someone who's, you know, a mega fan of LTA and wants to hear from the players as much as possible. So I think there's a huge amount of value there, and it's super cheap, and it's, you know, one of the few content content subscriptions I have. So yeah, shout out to YouTube membership for Travis Gafford Industries.
Thank you, rawnblade. I feel bad that I don't have interviews coming for you soon, but I will try to get you some content. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the call, and we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Dude, Jamada, he just fucking schooled you on the way out. He was just like, maybe you should fucking watch Cadril videos, Jamada.
Yeah, I mean, my bad. You know, I've got so much League of Legends to watch, and I admittedly, I just don't really watch a lot of content around League unless it is really, really pressing. Like,
well, you're watching a ton of content of League. You're just not as watching as much as
just not from. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something I'm trying to do better about. I know that there was a conversation about this in my Discord around the dive last week, and so like I'm trying to do a good job of like at least it is tough when you are creating content and watching the games and all this stuff to also commit to like 2 hours of listening to people talk about the same stuff that you talk about with everybody around you all the time. But there is information that comes out in those things like interviews or conversations or whatever that we all need to do a better job of getting information about from these guys. So something
I still
think
think he's
about.
going to Rogue before taking the Rogue spot.
So do
Before
I.
I feel like you'd rather do that. I feel like you'd rather do that.
That's where I'm at too with that.
Yeah. Thanks so much, rawnblade, though, for that call, and thank you for the shout out at the end. That was very cool. All right, that is the show. I want to give a huge shout out to Jamada for coming on here last minute and being down to do this, especially given that he is very busy these days. We'll do a round of plugs and shout outs, and Jamada, I'll let you, to return the favor and say thank you so much for having me on, Travis. This is the highlight of my week. Cubby, what do you want to shout out?
I enjoyed watching the Masters a lot this weekend. If anyone likes golf, that was
I thought that was a Valorant thing.
Yeah, no, don't worry about that, Travis. This is the real sport in golf. One of the best sporting events of the year, always the Masters. I really enjoyed that.
I think they call that football in Europe.
Yeah, I also binge watched The Pit, which was very good. It was very stress-inducing, but highly recommend The Pit and Adolescence as I caught up on some TV.
Oh, and Adolescence is great.
I'm excited to wrap up Daredevil tomorrow. And The Last of Us started, and I hope it's as good as the last season was. But yeah,
I can't believe it took Rory 20 seasons, but glad he.
Nice, good catch. Almost accurate. It actually, yeah, that was. I think it was 19 or 20 starts.
Oh, Cubby, you want me to here? I'll educate you. Yeah, he also almost threw. It was crazy. Anyway,
he did.
Jamada, what do you want to shout out? What do you want to plug?
Shout out. I have to probably be up in the LPL series starts in 7 hours that I need to watch. So shout out the LPL English crew because I'm sure they'll do a fantastic job on that. Shout out your it's not really a competing product. We're all podcasters here. I'll be on PowerSpike tomorrow if you're interested in international leagues. Yeah, just squint at me all you want.
I
Shout
mean,
out my
no, Hotline League is
show.
intentionally North America only now. If that was a
Yeah,
good long-term bet for me, and we'll find out, I guess. But it's always been, we've always wanted to make it mostly from the North American fan perspective. So
if you want to catch up with some LEC stuff, very very surmised, and of course LCK and LPL, or you want to hear I will dominate Flame T1 for at least 25 minutes in the episode.
oh god, that's what I want to do on a Tuesday.
Is that the minimum you have on the sheet going in? Like,
Yeah,
Dom must go hard.
I think there was an
views?
amendment to his to his contract that it had to be.
He gets paid per minute that he shits on T1.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, jokes aside, that and shout out Arsenal Football Club. We beat Real Madrid 3-0.
Ooh,
3-0.
That's a
On
beatdown.
Tuesday. Best night of my football life. We need to beat them at their home stadium on Wednesday. Otherwise, you guys might not get any more content from me for the rest of ever. If we lose from a 3-0 lead, there might be no more Jamada. I can't lie. Otherwise, that's about it.
He'll
I don't think I have
become
anything else to
Janada.
Funny.
You got the jokes today, Travis. What shoutouts do you have?
Cubby's like, get the show fucking going. Wrap this shit up. Get me out of
I haven't
here.
eaten yet, you know?
I'm going to be in Santa Clara this weekend for MXP Santa Clara. I'll be watching the games from the Magic the Gathering tables there, but did get invited there as a special guest, so please come out and see me. If you can't see me there, I'll be at MagicCon Vegas in June, so that's another opportunity. That's the weekend before MSI, so that'll be a fun time, a nice little break before we get into the games up in Vancouver, for which I will definitely be at. I'm looking forward to that. Other than that, yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Really enjoy it. Again, thank you to Jamada for coming in last minute. I was a little worried. There was not as much to talk about this week, besides obviously the games, but people don't always call in about that stuff. And so the fact that we had a nice big Los Ratones call that Jamada could weigh in, I think was really fun. So thanks everybody for watching. We will see you again next Monday. Talk to you then.